Today we're going to talk about winding watches. Why is it possible to damage the watch while you wind it? What is the right way to wind the watch? And we're going to demonstrate it. How frequently should you wind the watch? Why are automatic winding watches considered better than the manual winding ones? And if that's true, why did NASA opt for manual winding watches? Grigor, welcome back to the Talks with the Watchmaker.
Thank you, Sam. Nice to be here. This is a very interesting topic you chose. You know, winding is sometimes a lot of source a lot of frustration, but it's something very easy to once you understand how a watch works, mechanical watch, manual winding versus automatic winding. So let's talk about it.
So please walk us through this process of winding the watch.
So if we go slightly more in depth, what is happening when we actually wind the crown? We are winding a spring inside the watch, basically a mechanical battery. How this mechanical battery is made is very simple. Imagine a roll of film, you know, those old rolls of film at the cinema. Imagine the tin box that's round in shape, and inside you have a strip of film that's in a big coil. Well, it is exactly the same thing that is inside the watch. However, instead of the film, it's a very fine strip of metal that is coiled up in very tightly in that confined circular space. And every time you wind it, you're basically adding a lot more tension to that spring. So you're winding it, it's creating a lot of tension, and if you let go, that tension would unwind completely and your energy would dissipate instantly. So in the case of a watch, this is called a barrel, and the spring is inside the barrel. The barrel is the film canister, and the mainspring is the actual strip of film. So when you wind it, you're basically storing energy, but the watch does not let it dissipate in one shot. It basically times the release of this energy via the gear train and the escapement and the balance wheel. And this is how you obtain actually timekeeping.
I know that many people have this doubt about what is the right way to wind the watch. And since we have the watchmaker with us, what if we demonstrate how you wind your watch as a professional who knows the right way so that people see that?
That's a good point.
The proverb says it's better to see once than hear 100 times, right? So
exactly. Well, let me try to demonstrate it here with the watch I have on my wrist. Now, before we get into the winding, let me tell you that if you have a watch, a sports watch, because this is what I'm wearing, that has a good water resistance, notably divers' watches. Not all watches have this. But the crown itself might be screwed onto the case of the watch. Manufacturers do this to give the crown more rigidity, to make it stronger, to make it more water resistant. And so in my case, I don't know if this is clear. In my case, the crown is screwed on. So in order for me to wind this watch, I would have to unscrew it first, exactly like a lid on a jar. And I felt it pop out slightly. So now the crown is open and I'm able to wind it. Now, this crown has three positions. Since I have a date on my watch, there is the winding position, which is currently neutral or 0. And then when I pull it once, I'll change the date. And then when I pull it two clicks, it will change the time. I don't need to pull the crown to wind it. As soon as it pops out, if it's a screw down crown, I just start winding it. You wind it forward, you can do back and forth motions, and you wind your
when
watch.
You say you can do back and forth, I read in many sources that you cannot go back. So is this specific to your watch and the watches in this type, or no?
No, I generally try to keep my advice general. People might have different watches. If you turn the crown in the opposite way, you'll feel it will be a bit lighter in the feel, and this way you're basically not doing anything. Okay. It's not winding. It only winds when you turn it forward. However, when you have it in your hands and you're winding it, it might be easier just to do that back and forth motion instead of winding, let it go, winding, let it go. So again, it's a question of how you feel, how it's easy to wind it. Once you wind the crown, you'll start feeling that about maybe 25 to maybe even 30 turns in, starting to get tighter, and it will ultimately stop. When you reach the end, it's important to reach the end so you get full power reserve, but you cannot force it once you reach the end.
Okay, what does it mean to reach the end? Should I hit that the last pump that you have? Should I hit that, or should I just predict that okay, it's already getting tightened up, so it's time to stop? I don't have to feel that the last pump.
You should wind it till the end, but since you are realizing that it's getting tighter and tighter, don't expect to force it once it stops. So once it stops, you stop winding and you're good. Why you want to wind it till the end? Well, to give, maximum amplitude, maximum power reserve to your watch because it will be a lot more accurate. And once it stops, if you push forward, you can break the mainspring.
Perfect. So very beautiful watch, by the way.
Thank you.
And what I noticed is that you took it off of your wrist before winding it. And I know that many people ask this question, should I take it off of my wrist or I can just wind it while wearing the watch? Do you do this intentionally, or it was just a habit, or it was just a preference, or it was just the right way to do?
That's a good question, actually. For this purpose, I took it off to show it to the camera, but if I have to wind the watch, or if I have to set the time or synchronize the time, any operations I try to do via the crown, I will remove the watch. It's easier for me. I have the watch relatively tight around my wrist. I don't like it when it moves around too much. So it's harder to access the crown. And when it's harder to access the crown, you have a tendency of sort of, wedging your finger between the case and your wrist, and you're creating, unnecessary force tension on the crown itself.
Have you seen a watch that the crown is not, or the stem that you mentioned is not straight because
Yes.
the wearer used to wind it on the wrist? So there is this physical change.
Definitely. So the stem can bend also when we accidentally hit the case against something and the crown receives that shock. It could bend the stem.
I have a friend, and he's a very savvy person. He loves watches, he's an enthusiast. And one day we were talking and he said, oh, I don't like mechanical watches. I love automatic. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because I don't think that you are the person who would be confused in this case. But he was, and I'm sure many people are. So would you explain, please, what is the difference between manual winding watch and automatic winding watch, and whether or not they both are mechanical watches? I'm sure this question might seem very simple to you, but
No,
let's explain that.
it's a very good question. So ideally, when we have a mechanical watch, what it means is that this watch does not contain any electronic components. The movement is a series of wheels and gears and springs that are all working together to keep time. There's absolutely no electronics involved. This is a mechanical watch, and it needs mechanical power, like we explained. Now, when we refer to mechanical watches as being automatic, it's sort of a mistake, or it's a wrong way of referring to mechanical watches as, oh yes, this is an automatic. Well, that watch might be an automatic, but we've come to use the term automatic instead of mechanical. So the watch enthusiast world is filled with mechanical watches, and most of those mechanical watches have automatic winding capabilities. And this is where that automatic word comes in. Now that
I think many people, they
wind,
confuse it with the quartz watch. When they think automatic watch, it's a quartz watch. Something like that, probably. Because that's why they're like, oh, I like mechanical, not automatic, or the vice versa.
Some people will have two categories in their mind. It'll be a quartz watch or an automatic, which is not true. The technologies are quartz watch or a mechanical watch. And then within the mechanical family, then you have mechanical hand wound and you have mechanical automatic winding. So that's how I would separate it.
All right, let's talk about power reserve.
Power reserve is basically the size of your mainspring. Remember the barrel that we talked about in the beginning of our conversation? The barrel is the container, and the mainspring is the spring that's coiled up inside the container. The longer that spring, the more power reserve the watch will have because the more you can wind it. And today, modern watches have anywhere from 38 to 75 or 72 hours of power reserve. And the ideology behind power reserve is achieving convenience, basically. So, in case of a manual wind, you don't need to have that much of a power reserve. 50 hours is a good general rule. You have to wind the watch every day anyways, and it's just in case if you forget to wind it on one day, the watch won't stop. So it's sort of a backup plan. This is why there's a 55-hour power reserve on a manual wind watch. If we look at convenience, manufacturers are increasing their power reserve because basically they would like you to move away from watch winders, I guess, and make it more convenient to owning that watch.
Over the time, when you are using, for example, a tech device, right, your smartphone, over the time the battery health decreases, and in 2 years, 5 years, you will see in the settings that your battery health is 70% or 80%.
Yes.
Is it the same for mechanical watches?
Maybe not as drastic, but yes, the life of the spring will the life of the barrel will decrease in terms of strength. So this happens in a very, very long period of time. It won't happen within a 5-year, maybe in a 10-year period. So what happens is that very long strip of metal basically is in that confined space. It's very, very tiny, and it's constantly being wound and unwound, wound and unwound. Over time, it might lose its tension. So when you bring your watch in for servicing, the watchmaker ideally will replace the mainspring. And this will make sure that the watch is working at the optimal strength, which will give the balance wheel very good amplitude. It will not react with outside movements and events. When you have a good amplitude, the watch is working very well. It's a good health check, basically. So changing the mainspring during servicing is a very important step. Maybe some antique watches, if the mainspring is not available, the watchmaker can clean it and reassemble it. That will also help. But with time, the spring will lose its tension. Yes, so similar to a phone battery, a lot.
Yeah.
But the phone batteries have a tendency to die quicker. It's my experience.
So that's true. So the mechanical watches also have this battery health, but we don't measure it with like 2 years, 3 years, but let's say 10 or 20 years.
Exactly. And when you wind it completely, fully, well, maybe for the few hours, it's going to give you its maximum performance. It's more of the long term. When you replace the mainspring, it will give you a more consistent power throughout the timeline.
I want to show you this image. This is a beautiful Lange Zona, Lange 31, which has 31 days of power reserve.
Wow, imagine that.
That's crazy. And I can assume that it has enormous mainsprings because there are two.
Yes, 2 barrels. I guess this is what you need to achieve 31 days. But even with 2 barrels, they need to be huge or massive barrels because 31 days is not an easy feat. We were talking about hours, and now we're talking about days. So I'm pretty sure that the barrels are occupying most of the space in this movement.
The length of each mainspring is 1,850 millimeters.
Wow, that's over a meter for each mainspring. Imagine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And mainsprings can also be cleaned and serviced. Ideally, it's better to replace them, but sometimes the watchmakers do remove it from the barrel. They clean it and you unroll it, and they're about 35 centimeters long. But imagine having this; it's more than double, and there's two.
Two, yes. But the interesting thing is that the case diameter is almost 46 millimeters, and the case thickness is 15.9 millimeters. So this is quite a chunky watch.
Yes, it
I
is.
think it is. So my question is, what is the border between the comfort of the watch wearer and the performance of the watch?
That's a good ratio that only the person who is attracted towards a timepiece will justify themselves. 46, yes, is considered a very big diameter for a wristwatch. However, there are wrists out there who can wear that watch without any issue. That watch will look perfectly fine on the wrist, and some people might actually be attracted to this watch because of its diameter size. So I don't think there's a true ratio, comfort versus convenience when it relates to size. It's more of a personal taste question. But yes, if you have a smaller wrist, obviously this watch is not for you. Gaining in power reserve, but also gaining in size. Well, basically you need the space. And 15 millimeter thickness relative to a 46 millimeter case, I think visually it's well balanced. But again, I'll leave that to whoever chooses to try it around the wrist, and maybe they'll go with that size of a case.
I have tiny wrist, but I will wear this longer watch because it's longer.
That's it. Yeah, a lot of people would too. I would have no issues wearing it either.
Reliability. Let's talk about this. I mentioned that NASA, when testing the watches for its space mission, they opt for manual winding watches, and I think this is a standard for many people when it comes to understanding of the reliability of the watch, because if NASA chooses manual winding watches to wear in the space, it means maybe this is more reliable, or it is not. Why did they choose that option?
Good question. Well, NASA chose, I think the primary idea is there is no gravity in space. And although when I explained sort of the automatic winding mechanism, I said it captures kinetic energy. It doesn't only rely on kinetic energy, it also relies on gravity. So gravity will pull that oscillating weight that's, free inside the movement down every opportunity it has. And the fact that this oscillating weight keeps moving because of gravity and kinetic energy, it winds the watch. Here on Earth, we rely on gravity a lot, and so manual automatic winding systems will be able to capture that energy.
Do you have a watch winder?
I do. It
You
is
do?
it is collecting dust, though.
So my second question,
Yes.
do we need a watch winder?
Watch winder can be very useful, however. It depends of your personality, how you wear the watches. If you have one watch for every day of the week, yes, I would say maybe a watch winder would be a convenient way of organizing your watches. I'm the type that I wear one watch and I never take it off, and so this is why my watch winder is collecting dust. Now, some people might have complicated watches. A lot of collectors collect, perpetual calendars that have moon phases, equation of time, and different types of displays. And these complications take time to set on a watch. Some watches come with little pushers that you have to find on the case and set the times, get the date. set the moon phase. It takes a long time to set them, and if you don't set them properly, you can actually damage the movement. And so to avoid that, you would set it once and put the watch in a watch winder, and the watch winder will keep the watch fully wound and working. So when you need to wear the watch is always on time, displaying the right complications, the right information, and it brings this convenience to wearing a complicated watch. However, it's not a necessity. That's how it.
Probably like only for those who have a lot of watches and they don't wear them every day or even once a week, and they need to keep them working. Or do you don't even keep them working?
You don't need to keep watches working. It's putting a watch in a watch winder is not better for the watch health as leaving it stopped completely. Don't forget these are movements, they're mechanisms that are working inside. It would be sort of the same argument to say, I'm never going to turn off my car engine because I like the oil running everywhere in all the pistons and so on. And so when you come home, you don't turn off the engine. It's you're using the engine, it's working. Same thing with the watches. The oils that are inside the watches, their enemy is not necessarily are they moving about or not. It's time itself. After a certain amount of time, they dry out. So if you put the watch in the watch winder and you're using the wheels and the gears, you're creating wear and tear. That's which it's not a bad thing to create wear and tear if it's within the acceptable timeline. However, you would need to service your watches every 5 years, every 10 years, depending on the watch. The more you wear the watch, the sooner it will require servicing. So putting it in a watch winder basically keeps the movement working. So then you could count as if that watch was on your wrist the whole 5 years, if it was always wound and always on time.
The last question I would like to ask you is, what are the 3 tips that you would give to the watch wearers when it comes to winding their watches?
The first one is schedule it within your day. If you decide to wind it every night before going to bed, do that. I would recommend to wind it every morning as you pick up the watch and make it a habit. This way you won't forget, even though your watch has a longer power reserve. The second one, remove your watch off your wrist to wind it properly. You'll be able to hold it also and enjoy, maybe if it has a see-through back, maybe glance at the movement once in a while. So it'll give you the opportunity to do that. And third is to stop winding when you feel that crown being tensioned, and eventually when it stops, it means you've reached the end. Do not push forward and do not break the mainspring. So these are the most important tips. I'm going to add a fourth one. If it's a screw down crown, or even if it's not, don't forget the crown has to be always closed against the case so no water, dust, or debris enters the movement.
Thank you, Grigor, and see you next week.
Thank you, Sam. Interesting conversation. See you next week.